The stock market is a battlefield of the mind. It is an arena where the greatest contest is not fought against the ticker tape, the insiders, or the machinations of the great financial powers, but against the deeply ingrained primal forces that reside within the speculator himself. Two of these forces, more powerful than any bull pool or bear syndicate, govern the fate of every man who dares to play the game. They are greed and its twin brother, fear. To conquer the market, one must first conquer these titans of human nature. Jesse Livermore's long and tumultuous career was a testament to this singular truth. He learned, at a cost that few men could bear, that the mental game was the whole game. He saw that the average speculator is not ruined by the market, but by his own undisciplined human reactions to it. He is a slave to his emotions, his decisions dictated not by cold, hard logic, but by the intoxicating rush of greed or the paralyzing grip of fear. These forces, Livermore insisted, are the speculator's deadliest enemies, always boring from within. They cloud his judgment, distort his perception of reality, and compel him to commit the same catastrophic errors over and over again in a relentless and predictable cycle of ruin. The game of speculation, Livermore concluded, is not a game for the stupid, the mentally lazy, the man of inferior emotional balance, nor for the get-rich-quick adventurer. They will die poor. This was not an arrogant boast. It was a cold clinical diagnosis of the mental and psychological fortitude required to survive, let alone prosper, in the most challenging business on earth. He knew that to win, a man had to wage a constant, unending war against himself. For those who are committed to a deeper, more methodical study of the principles that governed Livermore's legendary career, the essential text remains Edwin Lefebvre's 1923 masterpiece, Reminiscences of a Stock Operator. It is a book that transcends time, offering profound insights into the unchanging nature of markets and men. We highly recommend the edition that features a unique, detailed chapter-by-chapter analysis by Max Davidson, an interpretation specifically designed to translate this century-old wisdom for the modern reader, making its lessons more powerful and accessible than ever before. A link to this essential edition has been provided for you in the description below. Let us first dissect the more obvious of these two great enemies. Fear. Fear in the market manifests in many forms, each one uniquely destructive to the speculator's account. The most common is the fear of giving back a profit. A trader enters a position and it moves in his favor. He sees a small, quick gain on paper. At that very moment, a cold fear begins to creep into his mind. He becomes terrified that the next tick of the tape will erase his fragile winnings. They say you never grow poor taking a profit, he tells himself, and in a spasm of fear, he sells, snatching a meager gain. Livermore saw this as one of the greatest tragedies of the amateur speculator. He had witnessed countless men, himself included in his early days, take a paltry 4-point profit in the heart of a great bull market, only to watch in agony as the stock continued its relentless climb for another 50 or 100 points. Fear, he learned, keeps a man from making as much money as he ought to. The big money, the fortune-making money, is not in the small, nervous fluctuations. It is in the great, sweeping trends. And to capture those trends, a speculator must have the courage to sit tight, to ride through the minor reactions, a feat that is impossible for the man whose decisions are governed by fear. This fear creates a paradox. The trader is afraid of losing the profit he has, so he sells. But in doing so, he guarantees that he will never have a large profit. He is perpetually trading for a pittance, for a week's wages, while the great opportunities, the ones that could truly change his financial destiny, pass him by. He is so focused on avoiding small losses of profit that he ensures he will never achieve a great victory. Another form of fear is the fear of the unknown, the fear that paralyzes a trader and prevents him from acting on a clear signal. He may see a perfect setup, a textbook pivotal point, but he hesitates. He is afraid of being wrong. He waits for more confirmation, for more certainty, until the opportunity has vanished, the great move having already begun without him. This fear of pulling the trigger is just as costly as the fear that causes one to sell too soon. There is also the fear that is born of a losing streak. After a series of painful losses, a trader's confidence is shattered. He becomes afraid of the market itself. Every small move against him is seen as a confirmation of his own incompetence. He begins to trade with a timidity that is fatal. He cuts his winners even faster, and he hesitates even longer at new entry points. Fear has broken his nerve, and a speculator without nerve is a man without a profession. But the most insidious enemy of all, the one that works in perfect destructive harmony with fear, is greed. Greed is the force that drives the public into the market at the very peak of a boom. It is the desire to get something for nothing, the belief in the myth of easy money. The average man, having watched a stock double or triple in price, is finally consumed by an unbearable greed, a desperate need to participate in the seemingly effortless creation of wealth. It is at this moment of maximum public greed that the smart money, the insiders and the professional operators, are quietly distributing their lines, selling their stock to the very people who are just now discovering its virtues. Greed destroys the speculator's sense of proportion. It compels him to overtrade, to risk far too much of his capital on a single bet. It deafens him to the quiet voice of caution and the clear warnings of the tape. He is no longer analyzing the market. He is fantasizing about the riches it will bring him. This is the state of mind that precedes every great market top and every subsequent collapse. The journey of a speculator is often a solitary one, marked by the intense pressure of making high-stakes decisions alone. It is easy to lose perspective, to be swayed by the noise of the crowd, or to falter in your discipline after a series of setbacks. This is why we created this channel, to serve as a constant source of these timeless principles, a place you can return to, not just to learn, but to recalibrate your mindset. If you are committed to the path of a professional speculator, subscribe to our channel and return to these lessons. They are here to provide not just knowledge, but reinforcement and perspective when you need it most. Furthermore, we recognize that the wisdom of the markets is not confined to a single individual. The history of speculation is rich with masters who, while sharing Livermore's core respect for risk, developed their own unique styles. From the mechanical box theory of Nicholas Darvas, to the volume spread analysis of Richard Wyckoff, to the turtle trading system of Richard Dennis. From the deep value principles of Peter Lynch, to the pioneering trend analysis of Charles Dow and the modern psychological insights of Ed Sikota. There is a pantheon of genius to study. To explore this rich history, we have launched a new channel dedicated to the diverse strategies of the world's greatest traders and investors. If you wish to broaden your understanding, the link to this new channel is in the description below. Yet, as destructive as fear and greed are, Livermore identified a third emotion, a close cousin to both, that he considered the most dangerous of all. That emotion was hope. Hope is the great siren of the losing trade. It is the comforting, reassuring whisper that keeps a man chained to a mistake, that convinces him to hold on to a losing position in the blind faith that it will come back. When a speculator is in a losing trade, he does not need more courage or more tenacity. He needs an immediate and rational fear of a greater loss. But instead, he is filled with hope. Livermore stated it as a fundamental law of market psychology. In speculation, when the market goes against you, you hope that every day will be the last day, and you lose more than you should had you not listened to hope. This hope is what fuels the catastrophic practice of averaging down. It is what allows a small, manageable loss, which should have been cut without a second thought, to fester and grow into an account-destroying disaster. Wishful thinking, he insisted, must be banished. This creates the great, tragic paradox of the amateur trader. His emotional responses are perfectly, fatally inverted. When he has a profit, he is fearful, and so he sells too soon. When he has a loss, he is hopeful, and so he holds on too long. He is afraid when he should be hopeful, and hopeful when he should be terrified. This, Livermore knew, was the central psychological flaw he had to conquer. He had to learn to do the exact opposite of what his natural human instincts were screaming at him to do. He had to master the mental game. For the speculator who has finally recognized the destructive, inverted nature of his own emotions, the path forward becomes clear, though it is by no means easy. The solution is not to find a better system for predicting the market, but to forge a new system for controlling oneself. Jesse Livermore, through a lifetime of introspection and costly self-discovery, did not eliminate fear and hope from his trading. Instead, he performed a profound act of psychological alchemy. He took these two primal, destructive forces and inverted them, transforming them from his greatest enemies into his most powerful and trusted allies. This was the true secret to the mental game he mastered. He began with the most destructive emotion of all for a losing speculator: hope. He recognized it as a poison, a comforting lie that kept a man chained to his mistakes. He knew he had to replace it. And so, where the amateur felt hope, Livermore taught himself to feel a cold, rational, and supremely useful fear. He was not afraid of the market, but he was deeply, profoundly afraid of a small loss growing into a large one. This was not a paralyzing fear, but a motivating one. It was the fear that a prudent businessman feels when he sees a small, correctable error in his inventory that, if left unattended, could bankrupt his entire enterprise. This cultivated fear became the engine of his most famous and important rule: to cut losses quickly. When a trade went against him, he did not feel the comforting warmth of hope that it would come back. He felt a chilling sense of danger. He saw the small loss not as a temporary setback, but as the potential beginning of a catastrophic decline. This fear was his call to action, his internal alarm bell that screamed, "Get out now!" It allowed him to amputate a losing trade with the swift, dispassionate precision of a surgeon, long before it could threaten the health of his overall capital. He stated with the gravity of a man who had ignored this rule to his own ruin, that being wrong and not taking the loss is what does the damage to the pocketbook and to the soul. By learning to fear the loss, he protected both. The small financial cost of being wrong was insignificant compared to the immense psychological cost of staying wrong. He knew that a man burdened by a large, festering loss could not think clearly, could not see new opportunities, and was, for all practical purposes, already out of the game. This fear was, in essence, a profound respect for the market's power and a deep humility about his own fallibility. He knew he could be wrong. He expected to be wrong a significant portion of the time. His strategy was not built on the arrogant assumption of being right, but on the realistic, business-like assumption of managing the consequences of being wrong. To fear the loss was to acknowledge this reality and to act in accordance with it. Now consider the other side of this great psychological inversion. While the amateur in a losing trade is filled with hope, in a winning trade, he is filled with fear. He is terrified that his fragile paper profit will vanish. This fear compels him to sell too soon, to snatch a meager gain from what could have been a fortune-making move. He is afraid when he should be at his most confident and courageous. Here, too, Livermore did the exact opposite. Where the amateur felt fear, Livermore taught himself to feel a powerful and intelligent hope. This was not the blind, desperate hope of the gambler. It was a calculated, confident hope, born of the market's own confirmation. A profit, in his eyes, was the market's clear, unambiguous signal that his initial judgment had been correct. He was aligned with the line of least resistance. The prevailing force of the market was now his ally. To abandon a position that had such powerful validation was an act of strategic cowardice. This was the time for courage. This was the time for hope. This was the time for sitting tight. This concept of sitting tight was the offensive cornerstone of his entire philosophy. He famously stated, "It never was my thinking that made the big money for me. It always was my sitting. He had the almost superhuman patience to hold a winning position for weeks, sometimes months, riding a great trend through all its minor nerve-wracking reactions. This patience was not a passive act. It was an active and courageous expression of his intelligent hope. He was hopeful that the great trend, which the market itself had confirmed, would continue to run its full, logical course. He immortalized this principle in the story of the wise old trader, Partridge, who, when urged to sell a winning stock in a roaring bull market, simply replied, "Well, you know this is a bull market." It was a statement of profound simplicity and power. It was the voice of a man who had learned to trust the primary trend, to have hope in the continuation of a great move, and to not be shaken out by the fearful, meaningless noise of the day-to-day fluctuations. This is the balance that Livermore mastered. He channeled the destructive energy of his own natural emotions and transformed them into powerful strategic tools. He took fear, the paralyzing force that keeps a man chained to a loser, and he forged it into the disciplined scalpel that cuts losses with precision. He took hope, the siren's call that lures a man into averaging down his mistakes, and he transformed it into the intelligent, patient courage that allowed him to ride his winners to their magnificent conclusions. He feared where the amateur hoped, and he hoped where the amateur feared. For the modern trader, this is the ultimate lesson in the mental game. It is a call to engage in a conscious and deliberate process of self-mastery. You must learn to recognize your own emotional impulses not as guides, but as contrary indicators. When you are in a losing trade and you feel the comforting warmth of hope, you must recognize it as a danger signal. It is a sign that you are substituting wishful thinking for reality. Your action should be driven by a rational fear of a greater loss. You must sell. Conversely, when you are in a profitable trade and you feel the cold grip of fear, the anxious urge to snatch your profit before it disappears, you must recognize this as a signal of a different kind. It is a test of your courage. It is the moment to consult your analysis, to look at the trend, and if the conditions are still sound, to have the intelligent hope that the move has further to run. You must learn to sit tight. This is the great and difficult work of the speculator. It is to go against the grain of his own human nature, to act in a way that feels at first completely unnatural. But it is the only path to lasting success. The market is a mirror of mass psychology, and the man who is a slave to his own emotions is no different from the crowd he is trying to beat. To achieve extraordinary results, one must learn to think and act in an extraordinary way. This balance of fear and greed, this masterful inversion of hope, was not a gift that Livermore was born with. It was a skill he acquired, a discipline he forged through years of painful failure and relentless self-analysis. He learned that the ticker tape was not just a register of prices. It was a reflection of human emotion on a grand scale. And he learned that to profit from that emotion, he first had to become its master, not its victim. This was the true source of his genius, the secret to the mental game that he played better than any man who came before or after him.